everyone. Jacob here with Team Kitchen Fable, and I'm here with my teammate Chad, and we're going to be bringing you a recap of his game as Oldhim versus Sebastiano playing Chane from the Card Guyz in this last week's Flesh and Blood competitive team league game. So we're pretty excited. We've been bringing a lot of different heroes to these matchups, and this is a pretty good matchup to watch. I think Oldhim is slightly favored, but Chane can definitely set up some huge late game combos. Do you have any thoughts coming into this matchup? Just anything you plan on doing and keeping in mind?
Yeah, so exactly as you said, it's really those end game scenarios. The Ursur lock is a problem if it can get off in the right way at the right time, and some of those really big late game plays can swing it. So you want to keep as much of a life buffer as you can to give yourself that leeway if you need it. That
Yeah,
was the default thought going in. You do as aggressive as you can early if you have it, but then it's really about planning for that end game.
yeah, every little bit of life helps. If you need to kill that Ursur token late and they've got you in a lock, then just a matter of grinding your deck out and then you lose.
Yep.
So definitely don't want that to happen. All right, so we'll start with the die roll. I think he won this die roll, but it looks like it was tied at
Yeah,
first.
exactly. We tied, and then I rolled a 3, and he didn't roll Snake Eyes. So
Yeah, definitely both of you guys want to be preferring to go first. Soul Shackle is just amazing if you can get started one turn early on that.
yeah, and on the Oldhim side, getting that free arsenal to have a seeds for the first real turn from Chane is a very nice thing to
Oh yeah.
have when you can get it.
So you have a pretty spicy hand right off the rip. If you can keep these Command and Conquer and Pummel, you can get him
Yep,
off a big hand right away.
that was the thought, and I was really hoping for the typical Chane, not ideal starting hand where you make the rune chant and then just arsenal pass.
Yeah.
That ups the value of the pummel a lot in my mind because I'm not redrawing, so he's going to think the odds of me having it are lower.
Yeah, that's really true. So the one offset is it's going to require all four cards to do this. So you're not going
Yeah,
to start with an arsenal, but you
it
definitely
does.
think
It
it's
does
worth it.
cost me that arsenal, and yeah, I think it's worth it on the first turn because one of the ways that I feel like Chane gets a little breathing room is if he can get damage in these early turns where you're not getting a lot off the shackles. So being able to eat an extra card and guarantee a non-turn as the follow-up is a little more than having an arsenal in my mind.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. So it looks like he is going to try to block 6 here, commits an equipment pretty early. I think you're happy about that.
Yeah, the equipment block was great, but you kind of expect early block a lot of the time with Iron Weave, just because
Mm.
it's there to be used when it's really going to have that value, and it can be an early turn. At least that was my use of it when I was playing Chane. Um, some things you can save for a later block, but that one surprises you when you might need to use it, so it's good to use that one a little earlier than other equipment.
Yeah. So we just see his first Soul Shackle as a not a blood deck card, and that's pretty going to be pretty common with these new chain decks where the blood debt ratio is just so low. I think when they go aggressive, they bring in some more blood debt, but yeah, the shackles are not as important in these early couple turns as much as just getting them going for the late game, right?
Definitely. And here, I think I forget if this is the turn where we see I do make a seismic surge, but there's a number of turns in a stretch here where I end up forgetting to do that. I had just switched off of playing with Tunic quite a lot and did not think about doing the plating as much as I should.
Yeah, that's totally fair. What do you think about over pitching the righteous cleansing here, just so you have more chance of drawing like an earth or an ice, or are you just valuing it as a 3 block?
Mostly just valuing it as a 3 block. The hand was obviously kind of word, but I felt like with what I had, the get an extra, especially since he had already used the Iron Weave,
Hmm,
kind of dictated some of that play because he's going to
true.
have to toss some more meaningful equipment to stop the frostbite, or I'm going to have attacks in the turn.
Yeah. Yep. So it looks like he's got enough resources for his turn. He lets the frostbite happen. Um, despite that, you're still happy chipping in because there can be other instances where he's stuck with Blood Dead and his life total does become a factor.
Yep. And here I kept the Fate Foreseen in hand because due to Crown of Seeds, that's a very fine place to be playing them from.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and in Bravo, I just set those defense racks in the arsenal and wait till the very last second to use them. But that's really heads up in Oldhim. If you're going to be Crown of Seeds, you don't want to Crown of Seeds away something that you actually want to use.
Yeah, I found with Oldhim there's a lot of kind of seesaw logic between this turn, next turn, and sometimes you have to go to the third turn in order to make arsenal decisions and things like that.
Yeah. So he has a good start with the Plunder Run from Arsenal. Makes a
Yep.
rune chant.
His build definitely was able to get a lot of value off extra large attacks pretty consistently, and that does quite a lot to my game plan, especially after the fast start with the pummeled CNC. I had hoped to be able to stay aggressive another turn or two, but his extra pump plus draws off things like Plunder Run, and that definitely make me more interested in playing the pure defensive game.
Hmm. So you start off blocking with a Fate Foreseen. There's pretty much very little likelihood that he's playing attack reactions in this deck, I would say. But even if he was, you've got another Fate Foreseen to back it up, so
Exactly.
that's good.
The second one makes that a super easy decision. And actually, I do believe he was running at least one Red Razor that we'll see at some point here.
And I think you just pitched in Autumn's Touch and Oaken just to get that Earth React in. You're not super.
Yes, this was also just in case pitch stacking because I had just done the Winter's Bite as the last one to go under, so this set up a perfect Ice Earth Oaken on the bottom.
Yeah, that's great. And I forget how much
Usually in
his
Chane,
first.
you're not gonna get all the way back through the deck, but the opportunity presented itself, and the value of saving a straight 7 attack at this stage of the game didn't feel better.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So he comes in with Rosetta for 2 and 2. I don't remember if you had any Earth preventions floating off of Oldhim. It looks like you did not. But you did
No.
prevent one with Seeds, and then you draw
Yep.
into another defense reaction to Arsenal on your turn. So not bad at all.
Yeah, I did have to make note of that was half of the free defense reacts in the deck right there. So the likelihood of seeing more later in the mid turns from Chane is unfortunately gone down a bit.
Yeah, yeah. But with his lack of attack reactions, I think they're more important just for hitting breakpoints, which Oldhim
Yep,
already does amazingly with Crown of Seeds and Rampart. So it's not the end of the world actually to run through them so fast.
that is a fair point. Definitely does quite a lot when you can split those breakpoints off of Earth pitches.
Right, so we see him making lots of rune chants this game. I think that's his way of just trying to get the chip damage in while he's setting up his late game combo.
Yep, for sure. So I think the extra minnoisms and things like that really help with that consistent pumped attack pattern.
And then did this plunder run come from Arsenal? I just missed it.
I believe so. I believe he always played plunder runs from Arsenal except one towards the end, but I might have missed on this one. I only remember one pure draw plunder run.
We've got a ghostly visit coming in with the plunder run draw effect. Definitely just blocking
Yeah,
as much of
no,
this as
now I
possible.
remember this turn a little bit better. That definitely is from Arsenal because the buff applies to the Ghostly Visit just from the Plunder Run. So it's coming in for 7. The Minnoism is still waiting for a 3.
Yeah. Yeah, and here we see actually, I don't remember if you used the staunch response, but one of the nice things about staunch response against rune blades is you can pitch for an arcane and then just use the rest for staunch. to block up, but you might be saving it for the next turn.
Yeah, given the play pattern and fact that he had already played out the arsenal, so the threat of extra attacks was lower. I ended up wanting to save it rather than use it right there.
Yeah.
Plus
Yeah.
with the sync as well.
Yep. Ice reacting was another big thing, getting him off of an arsenal. And he does come in with a Rift Bind. How much damage is this Rift Bind coming in for? 3,
3, 6,
5.
7, 8, I believe.
Yeah, so the only way you're blocking this Rift Bind is if you commit both your equipments plus blocking with Spinal and paying for Rampart with Staunch, leaves you without an arsenal. Do you consider that at all, or do you think that's just way too many inefficiently used resources and you'd rather let him get a couple points of damage and secure your own arsenal?
Yeah, I mostly didn't spend much time thinking on that line. I probably did not think of the fact that adding in the shield gives the perfect block. I kind of accepted that this turn between the red plunder run from Arsenal plus the second pump card was gonna leak a little damage, and I'm still up in the very high 30 kind of range, so I figure take a little here when it's the end of the turn and there isn't much of a surprise left to save the staunch for a bigger attack next turn, especially if it gets like an Art of War turn, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. There's no way that you can prevent every single little point of leak damage, so you gotta just accept it sometimes.
Yeah, it's for me it's a matter of finding those. It's safer than average, so this is probably the right time to take that little bit versus uh thinking more in terms of I'll take the hit to try to crack back because that kind of logic does not work against Chane.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
When you're not a pure aggro deck, I should specify.
So I think we see another rune chant created.
Yep, getting some good blood deck cards on the bottom. So
Yep.
yeah, again, like technically, I could have kept the whole hand and tried to do a rouse into an E strike as a strong attack back, but I think preserving life total 100% more important against Chane, who gets more resources every turn of the game.
Yep, that's definitely true. So we block 6 here. I think that totally covers it.
There's that razor that was shown.
Yeah. So actually it is. And I think Sebastiano was actually one of the people running razors at the Las Vegas calling.
Yeah,
Um,
both he and I know Alex Need was as well because I played against him on day one.
yeah. So we're gonna get to see another nice Arsenal pass on your side. Happy to do that as long as the life total's high.
Yeah, I think for a little bit there, I was thinking of just doing the 4 poke because it would be guaranteed damage that gets through with that quicken token. Um, Near guaranteed. But again, any thinking along those lines against Chane, you have to really take a different decision of where that line lies. So that was one turn where it's to some extent I thought about it for a minute. There's another turn coming up later that it was a much more enticing decision to maybe try to go the aggressive closeout route, but I end up not doing so.
Yeah. Yep. So like you said, he does have this quicken token. That's gonna make for a fairly large turn potentially, and he's got a 4 cards plus arsenal. So we're just gonna buckle down and see how
Yep,
much damage we can block here, pretty much.
it's about as big a turn as they can have in with 4 to 5 soul shackle range. The nice thing about chain decks these days compared to pre-seeds ban is I find that in between 3, 4, and 5, one of those is going to just completely whiff in a way that it did not used to. So you do have a little bit of a potential window there. I think in this game, that window was getting lucky it wasn't a stronger attack turn rather than a window of I can take a small attack and
Yeah. Yeah, so our hand's a little unfortunate here. The only blue we had was an ice,
Yep.
but pitching it for seeds is definitely the correct move there. Uh, so
Yeah, and
we
as you
have less
see,
access to ice react.
we don't. But I did end up drawing the other ice in that's less common in the deck that I was running. The Ice Fang or Frost Fang rather. Again, it costs 2, so this hand I can't even try to keep 2 to play that one. But that card is it does quite a lot, I think, for Oldhim in the right builds.
Yeah. Yeah, and this Ram's head block is super heads up. You know he hasn't shackled yet, and shackling is going to break the chain.
Yeah,
So we're super happy to get value out of Rampart here because it'll break the chain, and your next one's going to come in for 2. Uh, so that's super nice. There's tons of opportunities for Chane to be breaking the chain actually. So
there
uh,
really are between that and the go again,
yeah,
Monobrand Skies, etc., Shadow Puppetry. Like, there's quite a lot, and I was very happy to see this as the next play. And it's setting up for a bigger turn later, so it needs to be considered. But right there, I think I'm fine keeping that, and I think I do end up deciding to just do the Easter egg for raw damage at this point.
yeah,
Um, there is an argument to be made for just pitching both and getting the double block discard, but he had the grasp still open, and at this stage of the game, I feel like that is not in my best favor to use that and not have an arsenal just to get the counter on that equipment.
yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. E-Strike is quite a versatile card too. I think even if your last turn you had to block an extra card, what you can do with E-Strike is choose to draw a card and just put whatever you draw into the arsenal, and you still hit him
Yeah,
for 5. So that's really nice stuff in Oldhim. And as we see with most aggro decks, there's no hit effect, so it's a pretty easy decision for them to just take all that damage
yeah.
and see what they can do with all their cards.
But yeah, at this point where he's on Soul Shackle 5, 6, I feel like pushing that kind of damage as the decision over the taking one potential card or that equipment gives me more potential for Blood Debt to be a serious out to win the game.
Can't use equipment to
That's
block blood debt, that's for sure.
yeah, that's the one of the other ways to be able to beat Chane is it really has to be at the exact right moment. But if you can switch the tempo and go a little extra damage when they're not ready for it and get a little lucky with the flips. So you can somewhat monitor throughout a game if they're whiffing a lot early, then they're going to hit a lot more on the higher ones,
Yeah.
and that becomes a little more viable of a plan.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to pay attention to in this matchup. How many blood debts they've hit on the early swings. It's a good out to keep the lookout for.
Yeah, here I am considering if it's going to end up being possible to keep that no go again effect and pull it off.
Yeah.
So I think some of my blocking decisions are a little more thought through on this one. But there again, I have the another of the frost fangs to consider as well in terms of being able to disrupt a full hand follow up.
Yeah. Yeah, Blizzard is super strong. Luckily for the chain, he has a time snap potion out, so if he wants to play around it, he can. We'll see when it comes time to see if he can cast Ursur, but yeah, Blizzard can definitely stop them in the tracks if you can get that into Arsenal and let it sit there until their big turn.
So yeah, they're deciding to use the red that blocks 2 to activate seeds. Was an interesting decision which way to go, because this is the first attack on the turn and it's got the draw trigger, so I definitely want to block that out. But Blizzard is another piece to that puzzle, but it's from hand, and I don't want to take a large amount of damage on this particular turn because, like,
Yeah.
here's where it really is the push to the end game kind of set up for Chane.
Yeah, we see him getting cards into his banish, getting ready to do a big Ursur turn as much as he can.
Yeah, and since the Ursur was there, perfect opportunity to use that Blizzard because it's a smaller attack and another resource card has been used. going to banish.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always good to do instants in the right priority. And when you actually choose to do the Blizzard on the Shadow of Ursur resolution before you declare blocks, just to see what he does, to
Yep.
get as much information for yourself as possible. And given that he chooses not to pay for it, you can just block it and be happy with your arsenal card.
Yeah, that actually is a pretty key aspect. If you play it as a attack reaction, you lose that potential.
Yeah, yeah. And, due to the way that they eroded Blizzard, you can actually cast it on Exude. This is a PSA for all my fellow Exude haters. You can cast Blizzard on Exude during resolution before Exude's effect is happening.
Yep. Here, I was obviously very happy to see Soul Reaping and an Art of War go. I feel like I
Yeah,
got a pretty decent amount of luck in terms of the lack of Art of War turns in the game so far.
yeah, yeah. That's a huge one that if you don't have to live through one of those, then you can save quite a bit of life.
Yep, and I believe here we are at the most amazing turn from my opponent. So he took quite a while to map out the turn because he's got the full 5 card hand. He has a very stocked Banish Zone from the Soul Shackles, plus the Time Snap Potion to factor in. Um, the turn that he has here is pretty notable for me. I don't know if I've seen somebody pull off in person the play that he does.
Yeah, yeah. As someone who doesn't play aggro decks very often and specifically hasn't played too much Chain, when you have this many options, I just can't imagine like the mental math and the mental gymnastics you have to do to figure out what your turn's going to look like. And the fact that he's up against an Oldhim who can do ice reacts and who can do blizzards, there's just even more things to try to factor into your turn. And the fact that he can do his turn and try to play around those at the same time is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a pretty spectacular turn to see. So I know going into this that this is going to be a turn where I am taking damage. It's
Yeah.
it's going to really just be a question of how much and can I find that balance of what's right to leak versus leaving that buffer for the next 2 turn end game that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have a lot of decisions yourself here, given that it's pretty obvious that they're going to try to cast Eclipse and get the Ursur out there. The earlier you can kill the Ursur, the better. But that also requires keeping 2 cards in hand or one in hand and one in arsenal, which is a hard decision to
Yeah,
make when they're coming at you with the 6 or 7 card wide combat chain.
exactly, and it's the most interesting hand that I've had for a lot of this game as well because it flashed very quickly there. But the previous turn I had Arsenal and Oaken Old,
Yeah,
and I drew the natural double fuse capability hand, which had been missing the all turns prior to this. So
yeah.
I'm going into this turn knowing it's going to be one of his real big turns and needing to decide is the fused Oaken Old when he's at 16 worth it.
Yeah, that's a classic Guardian deck maneuver. It just flashes that beautiful big attack in your eyes and tempts you
Yep.
so hard. You get that first cycle crippling crush, and you just want to cast so bad, but you know in your heart of hearts that it's better to save it. And in this instance, you want to cast that fused Oaken Old, but if the Ursur is over there, that's 100% better target. So I think you have the
Yeah,
correct discipline here.
I do, but the block that I just did on the first attack was the primary decision of leave that option possible just in case
Yeah,
somehow the turn doesn't turn out as big as it looks like it should be. Um, but yeah, it took a lot of discipline to make the don't take a ton of damage and try to crack back plan with a Oaken Old.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good hedge there just in case. Maybe worst case scenario, he did the wrong math or something and he doesn't cast that
Yeah,
Ursur. You just have the finishing touch. Um,
I think one thing that would have made the decision a little bit easier that did not occur to me until later in the turn or the next turn was that at this stage I did not check deck size. So at this
mm,
stage, deck size means that the more guaranteed path to victory, I think, is just the turtle up the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Another thing with these wide turns is when you know you're trying to save at least one card to potentially two cards to potentially kill Ursur, and he's coming in with 7 attacks, you do get to say no blocks because it's pretty much you have no choice anyways on the first
Yeah,
couple attacks. So you're like, just deal your damage to me and I'll save my blocks for the last couple to see what you do because I know I'm not going to be able to block every single one. If there were on hit effects, it's probably different, but yeah, that's something to keep in mind. If you know they're going so wide and you're gonna lose your hand anyways, you might as well just wait to get more information for your blocks.
that is, yeah, a very, very good point. And here, I thankfully do not have proper targets, so it's just removing his choice of 2 cards and no arcane on
Yeah.
that invert, but that does add to the blood debt played in the turn count. And there it is.
Yep.
Natural Eclipse from hand.
With another card left in hand by that time too.
Yeah, actually, the extra card from hand is just insane.
That's
Shows the
kiss.
power of Ironweave, honestly.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I've played it myself and I've seen it played from Arsenal, but I am hard pressed to remember another straight from hand like that.
So it looks like all of this was happening on the resolution window of one of the attacks, and he's
Yeah,
had a Razor Reflex sitting there in Arsenal for a while. I think he just wants to get some damage in to try to get a chance to set up a loop.
yeah, and
Um,
the face sound card on his side is Ursur.
mhm.
We there isn't a quick, easy access to that, so we just used a card to represent.
Yeah, I think you have to like add it to your sideboard in FabDB to try to bring that token into the TTS client because it's not in that little left hand side of line of tokens.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely a impressive turn and a very good use of all of the stored up resources from my opponent there.
Yeah, yeah, I took advantage of that time snap potion nicely, and I think you're just deciding whether you want to Earth React this or
Yep,
uh,
exactly.
like because I think even if you Earth React, it's still going to connect, and then you know that Ursur is going to attack after that. I don't think he has any resources floating, but it looks like we're still considering whether we can fuse the Oaken, but I think you come around to the
I come around to the light,
yeah.
yes. It took the few seconds, but I had to make the right play.
Yeah. Yeah, and making the right choice there. If you Earth React with the Earth Lore Surge, it blocks 2 anyways at base. So you might as well just keep it in the deck and save the Autumn's Touch, which is a 3 block to block the Ursur's attack.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. So I think you were on 31 at the start of that turn, and he dealt 16 damage to you.
Yep,
Uh, so that was a big one, but luckily you have the immediate kill for Ursur, and I think that's just the biggest important thing. He can play out the rest of his cards in his deck, and maybe there's some more combos he can set up. But
yep,
after you get past their Ursur, there's a lot less threatening things, and even if you just turn on full block mode, they have to use cards every once in a while because if they just make a Rune Chain and Rosetta you, then you can actually threaten their life total. So
exactly, yeah.
think this round of Soul Shackles is the rest of the cards in their deck, and from
I
there it's just
believe
open
so, yeah.
knowledge.
And then he does some cycling from here.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think in that Soul Shackle 6 to 8 range is where, as Oldhim, if you have the opportunity, it's try to get out of purely just set up for seeds and try to get a CNC or an Oaken Old, anything that attacks for 6 or more that you can play
yeah,
off a single card. Like, get
yeah.
that in there because that is the safety valve for the end game.
Oh yeah, yeah. We know that aside from Ursur, there's very few ways that Chane can go over the top against Oldhim. If Ursur is their primary win con and you can deal with that, then you're in the green. So that's really good just planning ahead for the Ursur. Um, and having Command and Conquers and Enlightened Strikes as other options to kill Ursur off of just 2 cards is nice to have as well.
And here we see getting an extra card back in deck at the end. that late game unhallowed rights does quite a lot to give you extra resources when you need it at the end.
Yeah.
Not necessarily resources in the blue card, but in this case, raw damage to try to still close it out.
Yep, he's got to find ways to go all the way over your defenses, or chip through slowly. But Oldhim is just the perfect hero to defend against that. So
Yeah,
we
and
even
on
get an
this
ice
one,
react.
I go with the Ice React just to try to guarantee that it's going to be just the Rosetta follow up, but he ends up using the Rift Bind there. Probably, yeah, it's the same between that if you're not playing the. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the card that's next to Invert Existence over there, Seeping Shadows.
Oh yeah, that's like the
Is it?
scariest card in the game in my opinion. The art on that is just so eerie.
It reminds me a lot of Stranger Things, actually.
Hmm.
Some of the poster art and stuff they have of
Yeah,
the monster over the mall or whatever that is.
yeah. And here we actually have something interesting. Just a quick comment. You choose to bring in Crater Fist instead of Null Rune Gloves, and some people against Rune Blades, maybe more so like the Lightning Briar lists. But if you bring in Null Rune Gloves and Boots, you can actually block 3 of the Rosetta with a blue. Is that something that you consider, or, and you value the breakpoint math on Crater Fist a little bit more in this specific matchup?
Yeah, a little bit more of an argument there, I think, for Briar. For me, with Chane,
Yeah,
the two block followed by one block is ultimately a little bit better because it's those breakpoints on some of the attacks with plunder runs and those draw triggers and stuff that I'm a little more scared of than a second arcane from Rosetta.
yeah.
I feel like against Chane, that's not going to matter nearly as much because they blow through their deck too quick.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, we even see this other copy of Art of War is like came at the worst moment too, where he just didn't have gas to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So you got through, or you got away with not facing against 2 Art of Wars, which is nice, but you still have a very nice life buffer despite that. So at this point, he's just going through the motions, making rune chants and swinging the weapon, seeing if he can catch you out. I think you guys made a reference to the Hong Kong finals where
Yeah.
they were actually in a lock, and then he draws the no block hand with I think Art of Wars. But that was a super good Oldhim versus Chane match that I would recommend viewing as well.
Yeah, and it is the closest to, oh, that game's done. I'm just going to turn it off and do something else. I don't know why this is so much longer. And then if you actually watch it, if you go with that first impulse, you'll miss one of the best games that I've seen
Yeah.
in a long time.
Yep.
So yeah, here we do see a bit more pressure than you might expect from a chain that's exhausted themselves out. He definitely did a very good job of evening out the power resource cards to keep the pressure on for the end game. Aside from the Ursur plan, so every turn until it's obvious, there's actually some reasonable pressure going on.
Yeah. Yep. Here we got a hammer for a third of their life total, which is pretty relevant.
Yeah,
Their
and
blood
now it's
bets.
just the game of whack a mole when you can.
Yeah. Yeah, he's only got 3 cards total left in the deck. I don't think any of them are recursion cards. Yeah, and it looks like you can consider just taking this to close it out yourself with Command and Conquer and Pummel.
Yeah.
But
So
he does put
there's
on some
the
more 7 damage pressure.
Yep, exactly. Saving those E strikes and getting this extra value at the end didn't
Yeah,
end up being enough, but it could have. Like I'm down to 6, and if he had just a few more resources, or if he had hit the solid Art of War turn somewhere in the middle there before that Eclipse turn, could be a little bit different here.
yeah, and he's got that cheeky invert existence sitting over there too,
Yep.
so you have to constantly just be aware of that as well. And uh, he's doing the right thing playing it out here, just doing the best plays that he can see and seeing what happens. But again, you're able to block almost all the damage and come in with another hammer.
Yeah, and here Blizzard obviously no real value left on that because he's not going to have real go again. And I think about here it's where we just called the game because it's
Yeah.
literally no cards. So what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. So we see you make a lot of good decisions in the early game, just blocking up all the damage that you possibly can. You stay on 31 life by the time he has to cast Ursur. That's an amazing life buffer to have so that you can afford to kill Ursur as fast as possible. If that Ursur lives a couple turns, you start churning through your own cards fast, and there's little room for you to actually come back and kill it if you don't have the life buffer required for that.
Yep. And that is, again, one of those key things to plan for in the matchup, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he I think he does everything right too. If he was a little bit luckier with the Art of Wars, that could have helped chip some damage through, but despite the luck factor, we see him set that late game Ursur play up. Like that's not an accident. That didn't happen because of his draws.
Yeah.
You know that he pitch stacked that, and he knew that Ursur was going to be castable. Um, I mean, there's no way you go into this game with no plan as Chane. You can't just play out your hand to hand, and your hope for good banishes. He knows from turn one, he's ready. He's pitching his reds and blues in a good um,
Yeah.
density, and he's saving up his blood debt cards, taking a little bit of blood debt damage, but he's ready to cast that Ursur when it comes time, and just hope that there's enough chip damage.
And I think overall with Oldhim, I would agree it's a bit favorable of a matchup overall against Chane, but as you said, Chane still can definitely win.
Yeah,
Just it's not quite as easy as it used to be in these kinds of longer matchups.
yeah,
But I feel like Oldhim, that's the real deck building challenge is can you have a deck that's able to defend as well as needed to manage these kinds of games where you have to take that sort of stance? And can you be aggressive enough in the other matchups where the turtling up mode just doesn't get there?
yeah, yeah. Oldhim
It's
just
like
has it built
Prism.
in. The defense is just built into Oldhim with his hero react, his access to Crown of Seeds and Rampart. So you really have to build to his weaknesses and see what those other matchups look like. Prism, like you said, and Dash as well, if Dash ever becomes relevant in the meta again.
Yeah, and then we get to see how everything shuffles with Everfest. Cannot wait.
Yeah, super excited for that. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this game. If you did, it would be much appreciated if you could leave a like and even a comment. Maybe you want to see some more specific matchups in the future, or maybe some ideas for different lines that could have been taken during the game. And a subscribe would be appreciated as well. Once we get to 500, we can start bugging you guys with community posts. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.